The Georgia Bulldogs won the 1980 National Championship of College Football with a victory over Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. The 1981 national champion would also be decided by the Bulls.
Hi, I'm Bill Fleming, your host for 20th Century Fox Video Sports. In the many years that I've been covering college football, I don't think I can recall a season that was more unpredictable, more exciting, or one that fooled the experts more than the season of 1981. And I think you'll enjoy reliving those thrilling moments as the drama unfolded in the scramble to be #1. Now, in the preseason poll, as made by the United Press International Board of Coaches, here's the way the top 10 teams were ranked.
Number 10, the Longhorns of Texas. Number 9, the Pitt Panthers. Georgia, the defending national champions, ranked 8th. Penn State, number 7. The Cornhuskers of Nebraska, 6th. Number 5, the Trojans of Southern California. Number 4, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Alabama was ranked 3rd. The Oklahoma Sooners, number 2. And the Michigan Wolverines were ranked number 1. But in week number 1, the Wolverines found that in Madison, Wisconsin, being rated number 1 was no sure path to victory. The Badgers had not defeated Michigan in the last 14 games. In the last 4 games, the Wolverines had outscored them 176-0. The game was a defensive struggle until early in the second quarter, when the defending Big Ten and Rose Bowl champions drove to the fore, and then sophomore quarterback Steve Smith scampers into the end zone to break the scoring ice, and Michigan moves to a 7-0 lead. The Badgers mounted a drive late in the half. They took it down to the Michigan 17-yard line, where sophomore quarterback Jess Cole throws to wide receiver Marvin Neal. He beats his man and goes into the end zone for the first Wisconsin touchdown to tie the game at 7-all. Then, with just seconds remaining in the first half, Wisconsin has a third down at the Michigan 1, and Chucky Davis pulls his way into the end zone with just 2 seconds to go, and the Badgers have a shocking 14-7 halftime lead. Early in the third quarter, the Wolverines turned to the man who would become Michigan's all-time greatest rusher, tailback Butch Woolfolk. He breaks tackles over the left side, streaks down the sideline 89 yards for a Wolverine touchdown. This was the second longest scoring run in Michigan history. Only his own 92-yarder is longer. That was 2 years ago against Wisconsin. Score tied now, 14-all. 4 minutes later, Wisconsin, operating from the shotgun, called a simple little screen pass, not designed for long yardage. But this one certainly turned the tide for the Badgers. Tailback Johnny Williams streaks down the sidelines 71 yards for another Wisconsin touchdown, giving the Badgers a 21-14 lead, and the 70,000 fans in historic Camp Randall couldn't contain their emotions. Michigan did make one final desperate drive, but the third interception of the day by safety man Matt Vandenboom sealed Michigan's doom. The Badgers had done the impossible. They had defeated number 1 ranked Michigan, and Wisconsin coach Dave McClain was carried off the field. The die had been cast for the nation's number 1 ranked team. It turned out to be the most precarious spot to be in during the '81 season. While this was taking place in Madison, at South Bend, Indiana, the preseason number 4 team, Notre Dame, was playing LSU. It was a highly emotional moment as new Irish coach Jerry Faust was making his college coaching debut after 18 highly successful years at Cincinnati Moeller High School. On Notre Dame's first possession, the first touchdown of the Jerry Faust era comes rather easily. Quarterback Blair Keel rolling left and throwing to fullback Larry Moriarty at the 2, and he's in for the score. The Irish had easy going, building their margin to a 20-0 halftime lead. Following a third quarter LSU field goal, 2 players who served under Faust at Cincinnati came up with a touchdown pass combination. Tim Cagle to wide receiver Dave Condini, 6 yards and a 27-3 Notre Dame lead. With the game well in hand, the fans were treated to a sensational LSU touchdown play, initiated by freshman quarterback Timmy Bird's pitch to another freshman, tailback Eric Martin. It's only 26 yards long, but possibly one of the finest TD runs of the entire season. No doubt the LSU fans were cheered by the performance of their young team. And Jerry Faust was obviously elated with a 27-9 victory over LSU in his first college game. This was the moment he dreamed of all his life, to coach Notre Dame to victory. And after a handshake with LSU coach Jerry Stovall, Coach Faust mingled with the crowd, soaking up all of the warmth of a victory. But he had to begin immediate preparations for his next game at Michigan. Defending national champion Georgia didn't have an easy time at its home opener down between the hedges in newly expanded Sanford Stadium against California. Naturally, a great deal of attention was focused on sophomore running sensation Herschel Walker. He set the NCAA freshman rushing record in 1980 with 1,616 yards. Midway in the second quarter, California leading 10-8. Versatile Bulldog quarterback Buck Bellew on the option picks his way into the end zone for a touchdown for Georgia. A field goal increased that margin to 17-10 at halftime. But without the relentless running of Herschel Walker, the Bulldogs really would have had their problems with the Golden Bears. He shows his might here, getting down to the 12-yard line, and then moments later, Carney Norris follows the block of Walker through a hole and into the end zone from the 6. A big touchdown, and Georgia widens its margin to 24-10, and they finally go on to win it 27-13 over California. However, another team ranked in the preseason top 10 met with disaster as number 6 Nebraska traveled to Iowa. Early in the first quarter, Eddie Phillips, a quick starting running back, pops through into the end zone, and Iowa has a quick 7-0 lead over Nebraska. Defense played a big role for Iowa in this game, and for that matter, all season long. Nebraska quarterback Mark Maurer has his pass tipped and then intercepted by Iowa's Brad Webb. The Hawkeyes were able to increase their lead to 10-0 by halftime with a field goal by freshman kicker Tom Nichols, whose talented foot was to become a powerful weapon during the season. Nebraska scored with less than 12 minutes to go in the game. The Huskers were trailing 10-7 when they began their final drive with 3 minutes to play. High-back Roger Craig continuing the surge, sprinting 13 yards to the 34. But here again, another big defensive play. Maurer loses the snap, fumbles the ball. The Hawkeyes swarm on it, and all Big Ten defensive tackle Mark Ports comes up with the football. 2:51 to go, and that's the way it ended. The Hawkeyes holding on for a 10-7 upset over a team that beat them a year ago, 57-0. So already in week number 1, things were immediately mixed up among college football's elite. Week number 2 began with Notre Dame ranked number 1, visiting the Michigan Stadium and its sun-drenched throng of nearly 106,000 fans. It was a warm pregame meeting between Notre Dame's Jerry Faust in his second college game and Bo Schembechler of Michigan coaching in his 200th. Early in the second quarter, with the game scoreless, Steve Smith and Anthony Carter of Michigan team up. Smith leads his receiver perfectly. Carter sprints into the open. The All-America flanker grabs the ball at the Notre Dame 29 and outspeeds 2 Irish defenders for a 71-yard touchdown play. What was significant to the Michigan fans was that this young quarterback, Steve Smith, who was virtually in his first season since he played very little a year ago, had the savvy and the arm to find America's most explosive performer. Early in the third quarter, Notre Dame at its 27, Tony Hunter taking the pitch, throwing for tight end Dean Mastek, but defensive back Keith Bostic steps in front and intercepts. And shortly thereafter, Smith tosses to Anthony Carter at the sidelines, and watch the move he puts on John Krim. Carter dances into the end zone for another touchdown, and it's 13-0 Michigan. The Wolverines built that lead to 19-0, and what they were proving on this sunny afternoon in Ann Arbor was that despite an opening loss to Wisconsin, they did have the strong potential that had been predicted for them. Steve Smith putting in the clincher, and the end result of Michigan's 25-7 victory over Notre Dame was that a second number 1 ranked team was defeated in this young college football season. Number 2 ranked Southern California was also in the Midwest that second week, meeting Indiana at Bloomington. USC's John Robinson was welcomed to the Hoosier State by Indiana's bubbling coach Lee Corso, who was even happier when his team held USC to a scoreless first half. However, Indiana couldn't contain Marcus Allen forever. The great All-America running back goes 19 yards for the game's first touchdown coming in the third quarter, and the Trojans take a slim 7-0 lead. Fans got a preview of 1982 in the fourth quarter when Allen's understudy, Fred Crutcher, was turned loose. Then, late in the game, Marcus Allen capped the finest afternoon of his career with this 17-yard touchdown run. In all, his 274 yards on 40 carries was a new high, and it was solid evidence of what was to become a great season for Allen. The Trojans win this one 21-0, capitalizing on Allen's finest performance to date. And Indiana was proud, too, of the way the Hoosiers held USC in check, at least for a time. Georgia was now 4th ranked when it visited Death Valley in Clemson, South Carolina. However, it discovered that being ranked number 1 in any season would prove to be a jinx in 1981. The tenor of this game was established early, the domination of Clemson's defense. It swarms over the Dogs' Herschel Walker for a 5-yard loss, one of his few in his career. Things didn't get much better for Georgia on the next play. Buck Ballou under heavy pressure. He overthrows his intended receiver, and Clemson's Tim Childers picks it off, giving the Tigers great field position deep in Georgia territory. Georgia's defense puts on a bit of pressure themselves, forcing Clemson quarterback Homer Jordan into a scrambling mode. He fires a bullet to a diving Perry Tuttle in the corner of the end zone for a Tiger touchdown. 7-0, Clemson leads. Late in the first half, Walker was still having his problems. A fumble here, and William Perry recovers for Clemson. The Tigers capitalized on this mistake with a field goal for a 10-0 lead over the defending national champions, and Georgia's 15-game winning streak, the longest in the nation, was indeed in jeopardy. The Bulldogs came out running in the second half, Walker spearheading the effort. He was held at just 56 yards in the first half. But just when Georgia began to get close, the Clemson defense would rise to the occasion. Ballou is sacked by tackle Dan Benish for an 8-yard loss on 3rd down. Georgia had to settle for a field goal, matched a bit later by Clemson, which held a 13-3 lead. And now, with just over a minute to go in the game, Georgia tries to salvage a bit of pride. Trying to get into the end zone, however, Ballou's pass is intercepted by the Tigers' Rod McSwain, and it's all over for the Dogs. The unranked Tigers have given notice of things to come in 1981. Key defensive gems to set up an imaginative offense. That, coupled with the enthusiasm and leadership of Danny Ford, the 33-year-old Clemson coach in his 3rd full season at the helm. Ford's background certainly prepared him well. He played and coached under Bear Bryant at Alabama. In the 3rd week of polling, Southern California emerged as the nation's #1 team. The Los Angeles Coliseum was the site of USC's epic battle with Oklahoma. This game marked the first time that the nation's #1 and #2 teams met head-on since the 1979 Sugar Bowl game, matching Alabama and Penn State. Early in the first quarter, Sooner quarterback Kelly Phelps climaxing an 80-yard march, going in to score for Oklahoma. That lead didn't last very long, as the Trojans called upon their crown jewel, Marcus Allen. He barely gets touched on this romp as he rockets 27 yards for the touchdown, and that made the score 7-all. The Sooners continued to move the ball well, and in fact extended their lead to 17-7. It looked like the #1 jinx was about to strike again against USC. Quarterback John Mazer, still in the first half, fires to wide receiver Malcolm Moore. This one good for 19 yards. And USC has the ball at the 2. With time running out in the first half, Mazer appears to hand off to Allen. The Sooner defense takes the fake, leaving John Camana wide open in the end zone, and it's a Trojan touchdown with 43 seconds to go in the half. Oklahoma leading 17-14, and that's the way it stood going into the 4th quarter when Darrell Shepard takes it in for Oklahoma, upping the lead to 24-14. The Trojans began to pick up the offensive tempo. John Mazer spotting Jeff Simmons open over the middle, connecting for 16 yards, and down to the 3 it goes. Then with 4th and 1, the Trojans call on Marcus Allen. He delivers by stretching into the end zone for the score. It's now 24-21, Oklahoma. They're still leading, 6:37 to go in the game. The Trojans began their final do-or-die effort, Allen ripping off 19 big yards here. Then Mazer looking downfield, spotting Simmons. He makes a superb leaping catch along the sidelines, 26 yards and a first down at the Oklahoma 34. Now with 17 seconds to go, Mazer somehow comes through again, this time to Moore. First down at the 7. 2 passes failed. With 3rd down, 9 seconds to go, Mazer scrambles, spots sophomore tight end Fred Cornwall in the end zone, and he's got it for a touchdown. 2 seconds to play. Only his 2nd catch of his entire career. USC became the first #1 survivor, 28-24, in a real thriller over Oklahoma. Number 3 ranked Penn State traveled to Lincoln, remembering the 21-7 defeat at the hands of the Cornhuskers last year. The Nittany Lions holding a 3-0 lead early in the second quarter, with Nebraska quarterback Nate Mason spotting Jamie Williams in the clear over the middle, and he rambles 55 yards down the field. And then from the 2, Roger Craig gets airborne, crosses the goal line, and Nebraska's out in front, 7-3. 2 more Penn State field goals, and one by Nebraska, make the score 10-9. The Lions mount another threat. Quarterback Todd Blackledge teaming up with flanker Kenny Jackson. 33 yards and a touchdown. The 2-point conversion gives Penn State the lead at halftime, 17-10. Mark Maurer now comes in at quarterback for Nebraska in the third quarter, firing to Williams. He eludes a defender, and he goes all the way to tie it at 17. Penn State regained the lead on Franco's 4th field goal, 20-17. But then the Cornhuskers come right back, with Maurer hitting split end Scott Woodard with a 16-yard touchdown, and that returns the lead to Nebraska, 24-20. This seesaw battle continued in the fourth quarter as Blackledge connects with his tight end Mike McCloskey for 30 yards and a first down at the Nebraska 3. Then Penn State regains the lead as tailback Joel Coles sticks his head into the pileup and into the end zone. 10:59 to go. Penn State goes back on top, 27-24. And this probably was the most significant play of the game for the Nittany Lions. Kurt Warner turns the corner, breaks away, and scoots 56 yards to the Nebraska 20-yard line, setting up Franco's 5th field goal of the day and a 30-24 lead for Penn State, forcing Nebraska to go for a touchdown. The Cornhuskers try desperately, but Maurer's pass is intercepted by defensive back Giuseppe Harris. That preserved a 30-24 Penn State victory. And it gave the Cornhuskers their second loss in 3 games after beginning as the preseason number 6 choice. Penn State was getting closer to number 1. Even though the Nittany Lions have been ranked that high during Joe Paterno's coaching career, they never had finished in the top spot. And now they had very high hopes for that. Number 4 ranked Texas hosted 15th ranked Miami of Florida, and both teams brought 2-0 records into Austin's Memorial Stadium. The Hurricanes had received 2 outstanding games from their quarterback Jim Kelly, and there was no question about what the Hurricanes' strategy would be in this game. Miami came out firing. Kelly laying the ball perfectly in the hands of halfback Mark Rush, a 42-yard gain to the Texas 11-yard line. Kelly again, this time looking for wide receiver Larry Brodsky. But Longhorn cornerback Vance Bedford, who had a great season in '81, times his move perfectly. He dives in front of Brodsky for the interception near the goal line. Miami pins Texas deep in its territory, forcing quarterback Rick McIver to gamble on 3rd down from the 6. Watch this catch. Herky Walls bobbling the ball, but managing to hang on. A 58-yard gain. Texas works to the Miami 7. Senior tailback A.J. Jam Jones shows his strength breaking a tackle and carrying Miami's Fred Marion into the end zone for a 7-0 Texas lead. The Longhorn card section acknowledged with pleasure the traditional hook 'em sign. Going into the fourth quarter, Texas still led 7-0, but Miami drove to the Texas 32, where Kelly, facing a 3rd and 10 situation, lays the ball again right into Brodsky's arms, and this ties the score at 7-all. Texas comes right back, marching to the Miami 45. McIver finding Donnie Little all alone, and the former Longhorn quarterback shows some fancy running, breaking away from Fred Marion for the game-winning touchdown. A tremendous intersectional battle in the old tradition of college football comes to an end with Texas on top, 14-7. Coach Fred Akers can breathe a little easier now that the tough and up-and-coming Hurricanes have been conquered. Week number 4 found Southern California easily handling Oregon State. Number 2 Penn State shut out Temple. Number 3 Texas was idle. Number 4 Pittsburgh was stopping South Carolina. And number 5 North Carolina was beginning to make waves, moving into Grant Field in Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech, the team that shocked the nation in its opener by beating Alabama 24-21. The Tar Heels, going into this game, were 3-0, largely because of this man, junior tailback Kelvin Bryant. He had amazingly scored 15 touchdowns in his first 3 games, and he was averaging more than 173 yards a game. He was well on his way to another great day in this contest. That is, until this play, the costliest of the season for North Carolina. You'll see Bryant take a blocking-type tackle. Right here. The cartilage in his left knee was damaged, so that later he had to undergo surgery, and he was forced to miss 4 games. Defenses had prevailed early in this game, but the Tar Heels finally mount a drive midway in the second quarter. Rod Elkins nearly gets it in, stopped just short of the goal line. Then Bryant's replacement, tailback Tyrone Anthony, makes the cutback and goes into the end zone for a North Carolina touchdown. The Tar Heels have a 7-0 halftime lead. The big question at this point was, could Carolina hang on to that lead with Kelvin Bryant out of action? Well, Georgia Tech answered the question very quickly. They come right back with fullback Ronnie Cohn going in to score, and the game is tied at 7-all. But that was changed very quickly when Elkins scored again to make it 14-7 North Carolina. In fact, Elkins really had a remarkable day. He has the Heels moving again. This one on a 28-yard pass to flanker Mark Smith. And he gets thumped out of bounds just short of the goal line. This drive is all wrapped up with Elkins throwing to Tyrone Anthony for the score. Remarkably, in a span of 55 seconds, the Tar Heels have scored 2 touchdowns, and the lead has suddenly been built to 21-7. The Carolina fans could really breathe easier after this play. Elkins flipping it out to Allen Burris. Down the sidelines he goes, and he gets the ball all the way to the Tech 1. From there, it's reserve fullback James Jones getting the call. He goes the final yard for another Tar Heel touchdown and a 28-7 victory over Georgia Tech. This was a big win for North Carolina's coach Dick Crum, but a big loss in the injury to his talented tailback Kelvin Bryant, the most talked about player in college football coming into this game. The 6th-ranked Sooners of Oklahoma had seen their quest for the national championship dimmed somewhat by that last-second loss to USC. But they had high hopes in their opener in the Big 8 against Iowa State. Against the Trojans, the Sooners had lost 5 of 10 fumbles, and they were determined to hang on to the ball today. Quarterback Kelly Phelps, optioning right, hangs onto the ball tightly and gets 19 yards. The drive moves deeper into Iowa State territory. Good faking here. It appears Phelps is sacked, but the wishbone maneuvering gets the ball to freshman Steve Sewell, and he's down the sidelines for an Oklahoma touchdown and a 7-0 lead. That lead prevailed until the 4th quarter, when Darrell Shepard, who is now in as Oklahoma's quarterback, passes for Chet Winters. Big play for Iowa State here as John Arno dives in for an interception at the Sooner 46. The Cyclones begin moving behind one of the most powerful runners in college football, 246-pound tailback Dwayne Crutchfield. His fans just love to watch him grind through the opposition. That game-tying touchdown came with a little over 7 minutes to play. Normally, plenty of time for the powerful Oklahoma offense to score. Kelly Phelps is back in at quarterback for the Sooners to run the wishbone. And he comes through with a fine 23-yard run. And then the old nemesis returns, the fumble. Fullback Stanley Wilson is hit hard by middle linebacker Chris Washington. The ball is loose, and James Ransom has it for Iowa State with 4.5 minutes to go. Crutchfield carries the Cyclones to within field goal range. With 4th and goal, 1:08 to go in the game, Alex Giffords comes in to try a 23-yard field goal for the Cyclones. Unbelievably, it's off to the right, not good. The Oklahoma fans are put in the uncharacteristic stance of cheering for a tie. 7-7 with Iowa State. After a hair-raising 24-19 victory over Stanford the previous week, the 7th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes returned home to face Florida State. the first meeting ever with a Big Ten team for the Seminoles. Early in the first quarter, fullback Tim Spencer bouncing off a tackler going into the end zone, and Ohio State has a quick 7-0 lead. The Seminoles get a field goal to make it 7-3. And then Ohio State's Gary Alders is back to punt. But it's blocked. A wild scramble is on by 5 Florida State players. Linebacker Ron Hester finally comes up with the ball, and he goes in to score. 10-7. Florida State leading. The tempo is now set for this rather topsy-turvy contest. The Buckeyes drive to the Seminole 7. Quarterback Schleister pitches to tailback Jimmy Gale. He dances into the end zone untouched. The extra point is missed, but Ohio State is back on top 13-10. Mike Whitey takes time to read the Ohio State defenses. He sweeps, breaks tackles, keeps his balance, and picks up 37 yards before being knocked out of bounds at the Buckeye 9-yard line. The Seminoles are stopped at the Buckeye 5, so they try a field goal, or seemingly they do. It's a fake, and Kelly Lowry, the holder, takes the ball, dashes for the corner of the end zone, and he makes it in. Florida State leads 17-13 over Ohio State. This has become a game of big plays. Schleister looks for one of his own, passing to split end Gary Williams along the sidelines. He breaks tackle after tackle. It's really miraculous how he gets into the clear, but he does, and he goes 52 yards for an Ohio State touchdown. The Buckeyes regain the lead, 21-17. Doesn't stay that way for long. Quarterback Rick Stockstill fires a pass to Tony Johnson. He's over the middle into the end zone for a score, and it's 23-21 at halftime. Florida State over Ohio State. In the third quarter, the scoring continues. Stockstill picks up right where he left off. He connects with tight end Sam Childers at the goal line. It's another Florida State touchdown, and the Seminoles go wild over their 30-21 lead. And now Florida State puts this game on ice on this very warm day in Columbus. Stockstill pitching to tailback Ricky Williams. He lowers his head and bowls his way into the end zone for another touchdown. It's 36-21. Ohio State added a touchdown in the fourth quarter, but it was too late, and Florida State comes up with a convincing 36-27 victory to further mix up the top 10. Lurking back in the number 10 spot after its shocking loss to Georgia Tech was Alabama. At this point, Bear Bryant now had 309 victories in his historic countdown toward the record of 314. Ole Miss fumbled early, and the Crimson Tide takes advantage. Halfback Jeff Fagan showing some determined running in this 15-yard blast into the end zone, and a 7-0 lead. Although this was the 5th game of the season, it was the first game at home in Tuscaloosa that gave the home crowd plenty to cheer about. In the second quarter, Ole Miss quarterback John Fourcade throwing. It's deflected off the hands of Steve Deary and intercepted by Jeremiah Castile, and he returns it 29 yards before the last man, Fourcade, brings him down. Capitalizing on the turnover, quarterback Ken Coley keeps, races 19 of those 20 yards, and he gets it to the 1. Lenny Patrick does the rest over the goal line for the touchdown. So with the aid of a fumble recovery and an interception, Alabama's on top 14-0. That was extended to 17-0 at halftime over the Rebs. In the third quarter, new quarterback Walter Lewis scores another touchdown for Alabama from the 8. That extends the lead to 24-0 in a game that does not count in the Southeastern Conference standings, but one that was really needed to build the confidence of the Crimson Tide team. In the fourth quarter, Alabama began pulling farther away with plays like this. Lewis finding split end Darrell White for a 27-yard touchdown to extend the lead to 31-0. When this one was all over, it was 38-7 Alabama, and the fans of the Tide were seeing their team slowly coming back into the top 10. The Bear gained his 310th career victory. And so, moving into week number 5. Number 1 ranked USC seemingly was safe and heavily favored over the Wildcats of Arizona in the Los Angeles Coliseum. It turned out to be a very important game and a big surprise too. Not just in the Pac-10, but on the national scene as well. Marcus Allen gets a quick start in his 5th straight 200-yard plus game. A spectacular display of his dazzling skills, leaving Wildcats in his wake all the way. 74 yards and a Trojan touchdown. Coming into this game, USC had compiled a 4-0 record but had a tough time beating Indiana, and then had to survive its Oklahoma encounter by scoring with just 2 seconds to go on the clock. Things looked a little more comfortable here, USC leading 7-0 over a team that they'd never been defeated by in the previous 9 meetings. The Trojans extended the lead to 10-0 with a field goal, but then they began running into problems. A fumble here, and the Wildcats recover at the USC 47. Arizona sophomore quarterback Tom Tunnicliffe had an outstanding day. He gets the Wildcats close to the goal line with this pass to flanker Bob Carter. Then with just 30 seconds left in the first half, barefoot kicker Brett Weber kicks a 41-yard field goal to narrow the USC lead to 10-3 at halftime. He added another field goal in the third quarter, and that brought the score to 10-6. USC tried to revive its offense, but another crucial mistake is forced here. Backup tailback Fred Crutcher finds a big hole and does some dazzling running, cutting across the grain, but Arizona's Randy Robbins hits him hard. He jars the ball loose, and Jerome Crimes recovers for the Wildcats at their own 41. Talk about a significant play. Arizona returns to the arm of Tunnicliffe, who passed for 293 yards on this day against the Trojans. This one to Brad Anderson, sophomore split end. He has it at a first down at the Trojan 15. And the play that did it. Tunnicliffe from the 13 passes to Vance Johnson. He takes the ball securely in hand and goes in to score. Arizona is on top 13-10, and that's how it ended. A fantastic upset victory for Arizona coach Larry Smith. He's carried triumphantly from the field. And what he said was the greatest moment in his coaching career. And so, the #1 teams have been toppled for the 3rd time in 5 weeks of the 1981 college football season. And while this was happening, #2 Penn State was mauling Boston College. #3 Texas was playing Oklahoma in the annual shootout of the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Action began right at the opening kickoff, the ball bouncing off the shoulder pads of Texas receiver John Walker. And Oklahoma's John Truitt recovers at the 16-yard line. That led to a Sooner touchdown and a 7-0 lead. After that initial shock, Texas rebounds. Quarterback Rick McIver passing to Carl Robinson for 27 to set up the first Longhorn scoring opportunity, and that came when Raul Alegre gets Texas on the scoreboard on the first play of the second quarter with a 34-yard field goal to make it 7-3. Fullback Stanley Wilson sets up Oklahoma's second touchdown with this 11-yard burst to the 2. Wilson then scored, and Oklahoma held a 14-3 lead over Texas at halftime. In the third quarter, the momentum began to change in favor of Texas. McIver spotting Maurice McCloney wide open. He dashes down the sidelines all the way to the 4. And then from the 1, tailback Jam Jones hurls himself over the line and into the end zone for a Texas touchdown. The Longhorns added a field goal moments later to trail by only 1 point, 14-13. The tough Texas defense got the ball back very quickly, and the Longhorns drive to the Sooner 36. McIver finds McCloney all alone in the end zone. It's another Texas touchdown. And for the first time in the game, Texas leads 20-14. Midway in the fourth quarter, Texas extends its lead. McIver freezes the defense with a fake to Jones, then lobs a pass to Lawrence Sambleton for the touchdown. 27-14 Texas. And to add insult to injury, the Longhorns scored on the final play of the game. Rodney Tate rambling 17 yards into the end zone. Texas wins this one big, 34-14. The Longhorns hang on to #3 and aim higher. Fourth-ranked Pittsburgh faced a tough test, traveling to West Virginia without their quarterback Dan Marino, who was out with a shoulder injury. The Panthers were undefeated, 3-0, and the Mountaineers were also undefeated at 4-0 coming into this game. The loss of Marino made particularly big headlines because at that time the Panther quarterback was the top-ranked passer in the nation in college football. And so in this game, the slack was taken up by the ground troops. Halfback Brian Thomas breaking off tackle, overpowering several would-be tacklers, and romping all the way for a touchdown. This fine run gave Pitt a 7-0 halftime lead. Pitt added a field goal midway through the third quarter to lead 10-0, and that put the pressure on West Virginia. The Mountaineers were trying desperately to get something started. And with this 3rd and 9 at their own 21, the roof caves in as quarterback Oliver Luck throws, but it's intercepted by Rick Cranack. This is the break that the Panthers were waiting for because it gives Pitt the ball deep in West Virginia territory. And once again, it's Thomas on the ground, bursting over for his second touchdown, and Pittsburgh seals a 17-0 victory over West Virginia, a highly improved ball club in '81. Pitt's Jackie Sherrill is congratulated by Don Neyland on a hard-earned victory, accomplished without the leadership of quarterback Dan Marino. Seventh-ranked Alabama was in for a big surprise in Week 5, playing unranked but undefeated Southern Mississippi. Late in the third quarter, a 3-3 tie. Alabama's Joe Carter evades all kinds of trouble, staying on his feet, goes into the end zone for a tied touchdown, and Alabama leads 10-3. On the ensuing drive, Southern Mississippi put on a display of versatile offensive football their fans won't soon forget. Reggie Collier ties the score at 10-all. Alabama got a field goal to lead 13-10, but with less than 3 minutes to play, the Golden Eagles got the ball back, and their hearts began to pound. They were out of timeouts, but with only 8 seconds to go, Alabama made a critical mistake. The Tide called timeout, and that gave Southern Mississippi a chance to tie with a field goal. Kicker Steve Clark won't ever forget this moment. From 40 yards out, he makes it good, and the game is tied at 13-all. It's a devastating blow to the Alabama fortunes. 1 loss and 1 tie in the Tide's first 5 games. Week 6 found the Longhorns of Texas boosted into the #1 spot with a 4-0 record. But they had to travel to Fayetteville, Arkansas, the home of the Razorbacks, who had a mark of 4-1. And the #1 jinx struck early on the first Texas possession. Quarterback Rick McIver can't handle the snap. The ball pops right into the arms of All-American defensive tackle Billy Ray Smith at the Longhorn 19, and the Razorback fans go wild. They move to the 1, and quarterback Tom Jones takes a terrific shot, but he scores the touchdown. The extra point failed. However, moments later, the Razorbacks got a safety to lead 8-0, and it wasn't long before they were back knocking on the door again. This time, however, Vance Bedford of Texas moves in to make a key interception near the goal line. The good fortune doesn't last very long. Once again, disaster strikes Texas. The handoff is too high to jam Jones. The ball squirts loose, and Jeff Goff recovers for Arkansas at the Texas 5. The Razorbacks capitalize immediately. Gary Anderson cutting off a great block by number 66, Steve Fort, and he's in for the touchdown. 15-0 is the score. 2:54 to go in the first quarter. At halftime, Arkansas led 25-3. Early in the third quarter, Jones goes 4 yards to make it 32-3, and things keep getting worse for Texas. McIver's pass is picked off by Jeff Goff. This resulted in another touchdown. And finally, Arkansas upped the ante to 42-3 before Texas finally got going with reserve quarterback Robert Brewer. He passes here to big tight end Lawrence Sampleton for 20 yards. Then tailback Rodney Tate gets outside for 23 yards. This sets up the only Longhorn touchdown of the day. Brewer passes to Donnie Little. The 2-point conversion was good. Final score 42-11. The fourth #1 team goes down to defeat in the first 6 weeks of this unbelievable season. While #2 Penn State was rolling over Syracuse, #3 Pittsburgh, coached by Jackie Sherrill on the right, faced Florida State, coached by Bobby Bowden. Florida State ranked #10. Panther quarterback Dan Marino is back in good form after missing the West Virginia game with a shoulder injury. He hits Brian Thomas here for a first down at the Seminole 21-yard line. Then Marino, being very cool at the quarterback spot, connects with Wayne DeBartola, and the Pittsburgh fullback slips away from 4 Seminole defenders, and he goes all the way for a touchdown. This gives Pitt a 7-0 lead late in the first quarter. Florida State's Rick Stockstill is a pretty fair passer himself, but he runs into trouble here. His throw is picked off by All-America linebacker Sal Sunseri, and it's a lineman's dream come true. He goes all the way to score, and Pittsburgh has a 14-0 lead. Sunseri, by the way, is one of only 7 seniors on the 72-man Pitt squad. Panther fans get more to cheer about as Seminole All-America punter Ron Stark booms one 47 yards to Tom Flynn. He takes one quick step to the right, and then zoom up the middle he goes, breaks into the open, and there's no catching him. He goes 83 yards for another Pittsburgh touchdown. So midway in the second quarter, the Panthers are threatening to turn this game into a runaway. They well remember it was the defeat by Florida State in 1980 that prevented them from a possible national championship. The scores increased to 28-7 in the third quarter, and Pitt applies the clincher. Marino, working from the 18, fires to Julius Dawkins, and he goes in for a score. Both teams traded fourth quarter touchdowns, but Pittsburgh prevails in this one, 42-14. And the Panther players give Jackie Sherrill a victory ride in this most satisfying triumph. Pittsburgh is now challenging to be #1. Fourth-ranked North Carolina traveled to Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh without its star running back Kelvin Bryant to face arch-rival North Carolina State. The Wolfpack was really fired up for this one, hoping to knock the Tar Heels out of their lofty ranking. This Avery to Friday pass gave North Carolina State the early lead that was extended to 10-0 at halftime. North Carolina came up with an outstanding replacement for Kelvin Bryant in freshman Tyrone Anthony. He played like a seasoned veteran in this game. Alan Burris got the undefeated Tar Heels on the scoreboard. Then came a big break. Wolfpack tailback Joe McIntosh bobbles the ball, and Darrell Nicholson has it for North Carolina. Anthony does the rest. Into the end zone for a touchdown. For the first time in this game, the Tar Heels lead 14-10. If ever things were put in plain black and white for North Carolina State punter Calvin Warren, this was it. From his 22, Warren tries to punt. Blocking it is Walt Black. And guess who recovers it? Rocky White at the 7. Alan Burris puts the finishing touches on the play. He leaps up and over from the 3 for a Tar Heel touchdown. And so rallying from a 10-0 halftime deficit, North Carolina wins its 6th straight, 21-10 over North Carolina State. And the Tar Heels' #4 ranking is safe because in Ann Arbor, the 5th-ranked Wolverines of Michigan are having big problems with 12th-ranked Iowa. Following a fumble recovery, Iowa's at the Michigan 36. Quarterback Gordy Bohannon scrambles away. Fine split end Dave Moritz for 10 yards to the Michigan 36. Bohannon again. Somehow, he escapes linebacker Paul Geargash and manages to get the ball to Ivory Webb for 25 yards to the Wolverine 11. That sets up a 20-yard field goal attempt by freshman kicker Tom Nickel. It's up, and it's good, and Iowa has a 3-0 lead. And this was followed by another Nickel field goal, 36 yards. 6-0 Iowa at the end of the first quarter. The Wolverines get moving in the second period. Steve Smith throws to Anthony Carter. He's got it for a touchdown. The extra point puts the Wolverines in front, 7-6 at halftime. The Hawkeyes would produce the Big Ten's best defense in 1981, and here's an example. Michigan's all-time greatest rusher, Butch Woolfolk, is dropped for a 2-yard loss by defensive end Andre Tippett, a consensus All-American. And on the next play, Smith is back to pass, throwing for Woolfolk in the end zone. The ball's deflected, and Mel Cole intercepts. That proved to be one of the key plays of the game. And this certainly was a key game of the season for both Michigan and Iowa. The Hawkeyes were trying to remain undefeated in the Big Ten. Their fans would certainly reflect on this play when recalling the game. Quarterback Gordy Bohannon simply had nobody to throw to. So he did the only thing he could do, run as hard as he could for the first down. And he got it, setting up a 30-yard field goal attempt. Tom Nickel, an unheralded freshman, kicked his 3rd of the game, and Iowa had regained the lead 9-7. Michigan made a last-ditch effort in the fourth quarter. Anthony Carter on a flanker reverse is met at the line of scrimmage by Mark Bortz, Andre Tippett, and Pat Dean. Iowa takes over on downs. The Hawkeyes beat Michigan for the first time since 1962, taking a giant step toward the Big Ten Co-Championship and the Rose Bowl. USC's position as the number 6 team was greatly enhanced by the Michigan defeat, but the Trojans were facing a Stanford team with an explosive offense. The Trojans had moved to a 10-0 lead and turned things over to their defense, which was determined not to let Stanford quarterback John Elway have too much time to throw. He's dumped by USC's George Achika back at the 2. Back to pass again. Elway has a bigger problem. He's trapped in the end zone. It's a safety as Dennis Edwards makes the tackle for USC. The lead increases to 12-0 for the Trojans, and it has the USC fans on their feet cheering. There's no sign of a sputtering Trojan offense this week, as it was against Arizona. Quarterback John Mazer completing an 18-yard pass to Jeff Simmons at the Stanford 22. The ball pops loose, but the play had been blown dead. USC moves to the 8. Mazer passing. Timmy White receiving. A great catch in such close coverage by Stanford's Darrell Grissom. The Trojans now lead 19-0. The USC defense continued to frustrate John Elway. He had the Cardinals on the move and throws from the Trojan 11. But this pass is tipped away by middle linebacker Chip Banks, and Stanford had to settle for a field goal. By halftime, it was 22-3, and at the end, it was USC 25-17 over Stanford. Going into Week 7, Penn State became the 5th #1 rated team. But the Nittany Lions faced the tough West Virginia Mountaineers, coming in with a 5-1 record, losing only to Pittsburgh. The Lions had a perfect mark, 5-0, that could be in trouble since they were without the services of Kurt Warner, their great running back, who was injured. Warner's replacement, number 44, sophomore John Williams, was up to the test. Penn State took that 7-0 lead into the second quarter, facing West Virginia quarterback Oliver Luck, one of the nation's top scholar athletes, a Rhodes Scholar candidate, who had had all A's in college with the exception of 1 B as a freshman. He delivers here to sophomore flanker Rich Hollins, who grabs the ball and outruns the Penn State secondary, 54 yards and a Mountaineer touchdown. The score is tied at 7-all, and the Penn State fans began to wonder, would the #1 jinx be striking them? A field goal breaks that tie for Penn State. Leading 10-7 at halftime, the Nittany Lions drive to the West Virginia 11-yard line midway in the third quarter. Quarterback Todd Blackledge throwing for the end zone. The ball is tipped by free safety Tim Agee right into the waiting hands of sophomore flagger Kenny Jackson for a touchdown. Penn State takes a 17-7 lead into the fourth quarter. And it doesn't take very long for the Nittany Lions to apply the clincher. Kenny Jackson on the reverse takes off down the sidelines, and he's finally brought down at the 1-yard line by Lynn Murray. Fullback Mike Meade does the rest, leaping over the pileup for another Penn State touchdown. The Lions scoring again late in the game for a convincing 30-7 victory. Coach Joe Paterno holds on to his team's #1 ranking, but must face 5 more very tough games. While this was going on, #2 Pittsburgh was beating Syracuse, and #3 North Carolina was shocked by South Carolina. #4 ranked Southern California traveled to South Bend to take on Notre Dame, a team that had lost 3 of its first 5 games. The game was scoreless going into the third quarter. It was obvious in the first half the Irish were keying on Marcus Allen. So USC changed the strategy. Allen was the decoy. Fullback Todd Spencer on the fullback trap was carving out big gains. And then when the defense adjusted to stop Spencer, Marcus Allen, the nation's leading rusher all season, found the room he needed to move, and he got the game's first touchdown in the third quarter. USC leading 7-0. Notre Dame was solid on the return thrust. A great effort by tailback Phil Carter from the 5 gives the Irish the tying touchdown. And that's the way it stayed until late in the game. 5:34 to go. Notre Dame, still wary of the fullback slashes, allows Allen to break loose. He picks up 21 yards. And then it happened. The Trojans disguised the offense once again. The fake to Allen, and Todd Spencer gallops to the outside for the go-ahead touchdown. USC forges in front, 14-7. Notre Dame still wasn't out of it. Recovering a fumble, the Irish move to the 33, and on a crucial 4th and 1, Phil Carter goes as hard as he can, but is met by the Trojan wall. USC was happy to leave the Notre Dame Stadium with a 14-7 victory over the stubborn Irish. Going into the 8th week of the season, the top-ranked Nittany Lions of Penn State were in Miami, Florida to take on the dangerous Hurricanes. This was a game that really had Coach Joe Paterno worried, and he reflected on that after the season was over.
I was concerned with our physical condition, which started to deteriorate all around the Miami game time, because Chet Polavecchio did not play against Miami. Kurt Warner had gotten hurt prior to the West Virginia game and hadn't played against Miami, played some but wasn't up to par. I was concerned with Robinson, who was banged up, Farrell, who was not practicing well because he was banged up, and of course we had lost Coles.
Paterno's fears were well-founded. Miami jumped off to a 6-0 lead, and then late in the second quarter, quarterback Jim Kelly spots wide receiver Larry Brodsky open, and Brodsky goes in to score. The Hurricanes have a touchdown. Then a torrential downpour made things very tough for both teams in the second half. Penn State trailing 17-0 in the fourth quarter. Todd Blackledge passes to John Williams for a first down. Blackledge finds flanker Greg Garrity slanting over the middle. He's got 21 yards to the Miami 29. The nation's #1 team is fighting desperately. From the 13, the Lions finally get on the scoreboard. Blackledge connects with Mike McCluskey. He hangs on despite an interference call against Miami. The two-point conversion failed. It was 17-6, and then all of a sudden, things got tight. A screen pass to Williams. Picking up blocks by Romano and Farrell, he high-steps it into the end zone for a 27-yard touchdown. However, it wasn't enough, and Penn State lost 17-14. So with Penn State being the 5th top-ranked team to be toppled, Pittsburgh was in a perfect spot to move into #1. The Panthers had all they could handle before pulling out a 29-24 victory over Boston College. And #3 USC was matched against the Pac-10's upstart, Washington State. The Cougars were undefeated going into this game, with only a 17-17 tie against UCLA to mar their record. It's the Cougars' finest start in 51 years, and the opening kickoff looked promising. Taken by Washington State's Cameron Mitchell at the goal line, he sprints straight up the field 42 yards before he's finally hauled down. Quarterback Cleet Casper back to pass, finding split end T.J. Jones. Although he bobbles it, he hangs on for a 20-yard gain to the Trojan 38. The Cougars move to the 1, where Casper keeps it and goes in to score. Washington State's in front 7-0. The Trojans got a field goal to make the score 7-3, and then they turned loose their defense. Washington State at its own 20, sending Jeff Keller on the end around. He's hit by a swarm of Trojans. Chip Banks strips the ball away, and Joey Browner recovers for USC at the state 29. Marcus Allen, flashing the form that earned him the Heisman, powers his way into the end zone from 18 yards out on a great run. The Trojans move in front by the score of 10-7. But Washington State ties it with a field goal, and it's only in the first quarter. Late in the first half, USC moved to the Cougar 1. Allen going airborne into the end zone to score, and USC takes a hard-earned 17-10 lead at halftime. Coming into this game, the Cougars had the best defense in the Pac-10. It's being severely tested on this day as quarterback John Mazer begins to riddle the defense with his pinpoint passing, connecting with split end Jeff Simmons, setting up another Allen touchdown to increase the lead 24-10. And then just to mix things up, Mazer looks for an unfamiliar receiver, Marcus Allen. Allen takes the ball at the 4 and steps in for his 4th TD of the game, but this was the only touchdown pass of his entire USC career. Final score, 41-17. The Cougars' first loss, and Coach Jim Walden congratulates USC's John Robinson on what was a very impressive victory. As week number 9 unfolded, Pittsburgh was named #1, and the Panthers didn't fail as they beat Rutgers 47-3. Southern California took over the #2 spot and stopped California. But it was #3 Clemson that climbed the farthest. The Tigers were not even ranked in the top 20 preseason poll, but they've moved steadily upward. And coming into this game against 9th-ranked North Carolina, they are undefeated in 8 games. North Carolina quarterback Rod Elkins has moved his team to the Clemson 7, but the tenacious Tiger defense is unrelenting. Elkins is smothered for a 7-yard loss, and the Tar Heels have to settle for a field goal and a 3-0 lead. Clemson's offense is also powerful, and the Tigers roar downfield to the North Carolina 7, where fullback Jeff McCall worms his way in for the score. Clemson taking a 7-3 lead over the Tar Heels. Then, with just 14 seconds left in the first half, one of the most important plays of the entire season. North Carolina blocks a Clemson punt. The ball bounces out of the end zone for a safety. The Tar Heels, had they recovered it, would have had a touchdown. Instead, they settle for a 7-5 score instead of a possible lead. Clemson gets a field goal, and now the score is 10-5 in the third quarter. And North Carolina comes up with a trick play. Tyrone Anthony fakes the sweep, pulls up, and fires to wide receiver Larry Griffin, who takes it for a 21-yard pickup and a first down at the Clemson 4. North Carolina tailback Kelvin Bryant was making his first appearance after injuring his left knee 5 weeks ago, and it wasn't exactly the game to make your reappearance. The Clemson defense waiting in ambush, showing great pursuit, and Bryant goes down for a 5-yard loss back to the 9. So North Carolina settled for a field goal here and narrowed the lead to 10-8. Then early in the fourth quarter, North Carolina gets another break. Jeff Hayes fumbles the punt. Here's the break the Tar Heel fans were hoping for. However, just as they had done all season long, the Tiger defense became downright mean when threatened. No gain for Bryant. And then this is the play that really did it. Number 66, nose guard William Perry, all 295 pounds of him, dumps North Carolina quarterback Scott Stankiewicz for a big 10-yard loss, and it knocks the Tar Heels out of field goal range. So Clemson left Kenan Stadium with the 10-8 victory. The Tigers were grateful for the 2-point squeaker, knowing that but for a few rolls of the football on a blocked kick, things might have been different not only in this game, but for the entire season. Previously top-ranked Texas had an opportunity to improve on its number 5 ranking against Houston, because number 4 Georgia barely got by Florida. The Cotton Bowl bid was at stake in this Astrodome contest, with the Southwest Conference champion-to-be, SMU, ineligible because of probation. Early in the first quarter, Texas quarterback Rick McIver going to the air, but Houston's Butch LaCroix picks it off and brings it back to the Longhorn 22-yard line. Houston quarterback Lionel Wilson avoids a heavy Texas rush, hits Lonell Fee, who's wide open, and he's finally stopped after a 17-yard gain at the Texas 7. Veteran coach Bill Yeoman, whose veer option offense is very tough to stop, has an excellent quarterback to run it. Wilson takes it into the end zone on the veer option, and the Cougars have a 7-0 lead over Texas. The partisan Houston crowd showing its appreciation. The Longhorns and McIver are suffering through a rough first half. Late in the second quarter, things don't get any better. His pass is intercepted by Kelly McDonald, and once again, Houston takes over deep in Texas territory. Longhorn coach Freddie Akers is upset, and he became even more so when his team is called for a roughing the holder penalty after a missed field goal attempt by Houston. The Cougars take advantage as fullback David Barrett barrels over from the 1, and Houston has a 14-0 halftime lead over Texas. Texas did get a third quarter field goal to make it 14-3, and the Longhorns finally start moving in the fourth period on a key fourth down gamble. Tailback John Walker takes the pitch, gallops 22 yards to the Houston 7. First and goal to go. Walker gets the call again, and the sophomore responds with a superb effort, breaking through a big hole, hurling himself over the last defender into the end zone. A Texas touchdown, and it's now Houston 14, Texas 9. The Texas fans finally have something to really cheer about. Akers calls on reserve quarterback Robert Brewer, and he's successful on the 2-point conversion strike. It's now 14-11. All right, says Fred. 5 minutes to play. Brewer quickly moves the Longhorns into Cougar territory. He fires here to wide receiver Donnie Little. 19 yards and a first down at the Houston 44. Time running out. Texas moves closer to set up a 47-yard field goal attempt by Raul Alegre. This could tie it up. It's up, and it's good. And there's no one any happier than the man who did it. Alegre dancing Allegro style to the sidelines. And that's the way it ended, a 14-14 tie. The tie at least was not a Southwest Conference loss, and it proved to be very important by keeping Texas in the running for the Cotton Bowl, although it cost the Longhorns their number 5 ranking. The 10th week of the rankings found number 1 Pittsburgh having an easy time with Army, 48-0. Clemson disposed of ACC rival Maryland, 21-7. Number 3, USC, faced gale force winds and torrential rains in Seattle as the Trojans squared off against the defending Pac-10 champions from Washington. A must game for each team to determine the Rose Bowl selection. At times, the winds were gusting over 50 miles an hour. USC's Marcus Allen never worked harder for yardage in his entire life. These 13 yards enabled him to reach the unprecedented 2,000-yard barrier, the first college player at any level to reach that mark. The elements were so cruel, the fans needed all the protection they could get as the two teams battled to a 3-3 halftime tie. Then, late in the fourth quarter, still 3-3, Washington quarterback Steve Pallure finds fullback Chris James wide open. He gets 17 yards before being brought down at the USC 35. The threat bogs down in the monsoon, so Chuck Nelson comes in to try a 46-yard field goal. He connects. Washington takes a 6-3 lead over Southern California, 2 minutes and 19 seconds to go in the game. And although the Husky fans are cheering, they know the Trojans still have time to pull it out. But here's the play that not only cost USC a chance at the Pac-10 title in the Rose Bowl bid, but maybe even a possible national championship. On the kickoff, Nelson's boot bounces in front of the receivers and squirts toward the end zone. It's touched by the Trojans, so everyone frantically tries to get to the free ball. Coming up with it is Washington freshman linebacker Fred Small. It's a touchdown for the Huskies. They win it 13-3. And despite the wind and the rain, the fans could care less. As tough as it was to lose, Coach John Robinson congratulates Don James on the Huskies' biggest win of the season. Number 4 ranked Georgia fought its way back from its earlier loss to Clemson and has a crucial SEC meeting with Auburn. The Bulldogs are 8-1 and at home in Athens. Auburn is trailing 3-0 early in the second quarter. Fullback Ron O'Neal breaks loose and piles up 26 yards before he's brought down at the 22. Moments later on the Bulldog 8, the pitch goes to tight end Mike Edwards, and he goes in. With 8:15 to go in the half, Auburn takes a 7-3 lead in this oldest rivalry of the Deep South, the 85th game, dating back to 1892. Georgia capitalizes on a turnover. Quarterback Buck Bellew takes advantage, waits for Norris Brown to beat his man, and then completes a 46-yard touchdown pass to put Georgia in front, 10-7. Herschel Walker was headed for another big day. In all, he gained 165 yards in this game, and he gets 12 of those here, setting up another Georgia touchdown. With 1 minute and 12 seconds to go in the first half, Buck Bellew operating from the Auburn 5. He's right on target to Clarence Kay in the end zone. Georgia moves out to a 17-7 lead at halftime. It should be recalled in documenting the 1981 season that Vince Dooley lost 24 Lettermen from the 1980 National Championship team, and yet here are the Dogs in the chase for that coveted title again. They keep up the pace in the second half as Bellew and Lindsey Scott team up. It's just a matter of time now before Georgia will score again with their versatile offense. From the 2, Herschel Walker crashes in as Georgia moves out to a 24-7 lead and eventually for a 24-13 victory, the 9th of the season. Coach Dooley knew after this game his team was definitely in the running for number 1. The best match of week number 10 took place in University Park, Pennsylvania, where 5th-ranked Penn State played host to Alabama, ranked number 6. Joe Paterno greeted the legendary Paul Bear Bryant prior to the game, in which the Bear could tie the Amos Alonzo Stagg victory mark of 3:14. Early in the game, the Tide at the State 37. Quarterback Walter Lewis lets it fly. Penn State's Roger Jackson has an untimely spill, and Alabama's Jesse Vendross has a timely touchdown. Alabama leading 7-0. Penn State got a field goal to make it 7-3, but Alabama's on the move again. Halfback Paul Carruth sweeping to the 9. And then Carruth wedging it underneath a wall of tacklers, and Alabama moves on top, 14-3. The Tide added a field goal to make it 17-3. And then they were threatening again at the Penn State 5. Lewis fakes short, spots Vendross in the corner of the end zone, and it's a Crimson Tide touchdown. At halftime, Alabama seemingly is in total control with a commanding 24-3 lead. However, Penn State comes out in the second half with an impressive march. Quarterback Todd Blackledge drilling one to the diving Kenny Jackson at the Alabama 4. But it's here that the Alabama defense really began to shine, playing with great emotion for the Bears. Mike Meade is held to no gain at the 1-yard line. Finally, because of a pass interference penalty, this is Penn State's 6th straight crack at the end zone from inside the 4, and Kurt Warner is repulsed. A tremendous display of defense. Alabama Alabama wins 31-16, presenting Bear Bryant with his 314th career victory, still dreaming of a national championship with one game to play. In week number 11, top-ranked Pittsburgh held on to that tenuous spot for the third straight week, beating Temple 35-0. However, Clemson number 2 was engaged in its annual war against South Carolina in the Gamecocks' William Bryce Stadium. The Tigers realized they could possibly take over the number 1 spot with an impressive showing. Midway through the first period, the Gamecocks leading 7-0, but they're forced to punt. It's blocked by Clemson's Rod McSwain. The ball bounces in the end zone, and Johnny Rembert recovers for a Clemson touchdown. The extra point was missed, but a short time later, the Tigers got a field goal to go ahead 9-7 early in the second quarter. South Carolina quarterback Gordy Beckham tried to get things going through the air, but Hollis Hall proved here that the Clemson defense was alive and well. The offense responded to that effort with a Homer Jordan touchdown. With Clemson holding a 15-7 halftime lead, the Tiger fans could begin to taste a perfect regular season. But things weren't exactly over. Beckham spotting flanker Horace Smith wide open over the middle, and all of a sudden the score is 15-13 Clemson. The Tigers did open some breathing room later in the period with a touchdown to hold a 23-13 lead. And then Clemson puts the game on ice with his fourth quarter play. Tailback Chuck McSwain does it on his own, a 23-yard touchdown gem, putting the jubilant Tigers far out in front, giving them a 29-13 victory. Clemson ending its regular season with 11 straight victories, the only team in major college football with a perfect record. Both number 3 Georgia and number 4 Alabama were idle in week number 11, and number 5 Nebraska was beating Oklahoma. But in Ann Arbor, the 18th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes invaded the Michigan Stadium to play 6th-ranked Michigan. The Wolverines leading 3-0, and they're at the Buckeye 34. Quarterback Steve Smith putting it up. But the Ohio State secondary, under fire much of the season, was at its peak. This tipped pass was intercepted by Marcus Merrick, running it back 8 yards to the 18 and thus halting the Michigan advance. Early in the second quarter, the Buckeyes are at the Michigan 49. Tailback Tim Spencer waits for the hole to develop, then he pounds through it for 14 tough yards. Moments later, after calling several audibles at the line of scrimmage, quarterback Art Schlichter has the Buckeyes at the 1. He dives in for the touchdown and a 7-3 Ohio State lead. Coming up, a key first-half play. Michigan has a 4th down and 1 at the Ohio State 39. Smith tries to make it over the top, and closing in on him is Marcus Merrick. No gain. The Buckeye fans are happy with their team's 7-3 halftime lead, but that was erased with a pair of Michigan field goals in the third period. Michigan leading 9-7 in the fourth quarter. It was here that Ohio State staged one of its finest drives ever. Spencer eyes the blocking, heads outside, and picks up 19 yards before he slides out of bounds. And coming up is the play that won't be forgotten for many years to come. The Big Ten's most valuable player, Art Schlichter, showing his uncanny sense of timing, waits for fullback Vaughn Broadnax to lay a driving block that takes out 2 defenders, and then Schlichter slides into the end zone for the winning touchdown. Ohio State wins 14-9. The Buckeye players are ecstatic. They wrench the championship and the Rose Bowl bid away from Michigan, and they carry Earl Bruce off the field in victory, clinching a co-championship with Iowa. In the meantime, in the East, it's Penn State against Notre Dame, a must battle for the Nittany Lions before their showdown with number 1 ranked Pittsburgh. The once top-ranked Lions have slipped to number 14 after losses to Miami and Alabama, but they still have a 7-2 record. They certainly wasted no time in getting going in this game. Tailback John Williams barrels through a gaping hole in the line and goes 40 yards to the Notre Dame 4. And on only the 3rd play of the game, they set up inside the 5-yard line. Williams gets the call. He turns the corner, goes into the end zone for a Penn State touchdown. It's 7-0 with barely a minute elapsed in the game. It seems that everybody's fired up for this one. The Irish fight right back. The target of a Blair Keogh pass is little Joe Howard, 5 feet 9, 165 pounds, and a freshman. He broke into the starting lineup in the 7th game, and he averaged over 32 yards a catch. Phil Carter powers it in, and the score is tied at 7-all. However, Notre Dame coach Jerry Faust was later concerned when the Nittany Lions turned a fumbled punt into a touchdown and then added a field goal early in the second period to take a 17-7 lead. Obviously, his gloom was not shared by the Nittany Lion fans. But with 2 minutes left in the half, the Irish recover a fumble of their own, moving into Penn State territory. Keogh passes. The ball is tipped. Wingback Tony Hunter manages to hang on to it for a touchdown for Notre Dame, making the score 17-14 with just 23 seconds to go in the half, and the Notre Dame fans love it. Penn State coach Joe Paterno can only shake his head in disbelief. Now, early in the third quarter, the Lions are faced with a 3rd and 4 at their own 15. Quarterback Todd Blackledge decides to pass. He overthrows his receiver, and Notre Dame's All-America linebacker Bob Crable intercepts. He's the all-time leading tackler in Irish history, and he shows he could have been a pretty good fullback, getting the ball back to the Penn State 6. Now from the 5, Notre Dame goes to the air. Keogh lofts the pass for John Sweeney. He makes a spectacular leaping catch, landing on his back inside the end zone. Notre Dame moves out in front 21-17 after trailing by 10. But Penn State is not to be denied. Late in the fourth quarter, the Lions mount an 82-yard drive. Tailback Kurt Warner, playing only sparingly the last 2 weeks with a hamstring injury, still has the moves, and this great effort puts the ball on the 1-foot line. And on the very next play, the play the Irish didn't expect, the old quarterback sneak. And Todd Blackledge performs it perfectly. Touchdown, Penn State. In one of the best games of the season, the Nittany Lions down Notre Dame 24-21. Coach Joe Paterno can only tell Irish coach Jerry Faust and his young son Steve that this one could have gone either way. The final week of the regular season. Number 1 ranked Pittsburgh against arch rival Penn State. The largest crowd since 1938 jammed Pitt Stadium to see if the Panthers could hold on to number 1 and a perfect season against the challenge of 9th-ranked Penn State. On Pitt's first possession at the Lion 28, quarterback Dan Marino throws to sophomore flanker Dwight Collins at the goal line. He's in for the touchdown. With only 4 minutes gone in the game, Pitt takes a 7-0 lead. The Panthers get the ball right back. They move to the 9. Marino again to Collins. He has it inbounds for the second touchdown of the afternoon. Pittsburgh has made it look shockingly easy. However, the complexion of this game changed dramatically. The Lions scored after an interception to make it 14-7. Then following another interception, Penn State moves to the Pitt 8 on this Blackledge to Kenny Jackson pass. Blackledge scored the winning touchdown against Notre Dame on a sneak a week ago. He extends it a bit here into a draw with the same result. Touchdown, Penn State, and it's all tied at 14. The Nittany Lions had maintained their tougher schedule and honed a sharper edge for this game, and it began to look as if they were right. Early in the third quarter, Panther fullback Bill Beach cracks into the line, but the ball is stripped loose by Roger Jackson. Penn State linebacker Chet Parlavecchio recovers for the Lions at the Penn State 44. They move the ball down to the Pitt 42. Blackledge, back to pass, spots Kenny Jackson at the 20, and watch this move at the 10. A 180-degree pirouette, spinning away from the defender, charging untouched into the end zone for the go-ahead touchdown. Penn State 21, Pittsburgh 14, the fans go wild. Penn State on the prowl again from the Pitt 45. Blackledge looking downfield. He can't believe his eyes. Jackson is all alone. He hits him at the 9. And Jackson goes into the end zone untouched, 28-14. Brian Franco added 2 field goals. Sean Farrell recovered a fumble in the end zone to increase the lead, 41-14. In the late stages, Pittsburgh was just trying to salvage something out of this nightmare when Marino's pass was picked off by Mark Robinson. The downfield escort forms, and all Pittsburgh gets of Robinson is one of his shoes. He goes 91 yards to score. The final blow in Pitt's crumbling number 1 ranking. Coach Joe Paterno's Nittany Lions stunned the previously undefeated Panthers 48-14. The 6th #1 team to be dethroned in the wild, unpredictable 1981 college football season. Pittsburgh came back with a stirring 24-20 victory in the Sugar Bowl over Georgia. Jackie Sherrill then announced that he was going on to Texas A&M to become athletic director and head coach. Penn State beat Southern California in the Fiesta Bowl. So with the Pittsburgh loss, Clemson moved into the #1 spot. But the Tigers needed a victory in the Orange Bowl over #4 Nebraska to clinch the national championship. Clemson fans indeed were convinced that we're #1 as they revved up for the clash that would decide college football's most undecided issue. The two opposing coaches, Nebraska's Tom Osborne and Clemson's Danny Ford, greet one another before the fray. These two teams meeting for the first time in history. The Cornhuskers jumped off to a 7-3 lead midway through the first quarter. But the Tiger defense that had been tough all season looks very good at this point. All-America linebacker Jeff Davis stopping Roger Craig at the Cornhusker 16. And the assault continues on the next play as quarterback Mark Maurer is sacked by sophomore safety man Tim Childers, an 11-yard loss back on the Husker 5. Clemson moves down into scoring position, and Donald Ngabwike tries a 37-yard field goal. It's up, and it's good. Nebraska's lead is narrowed to 7-6 as the first quarter ends. The Tigers begin opening up offensively. Quarterback Homer Jordan lofting a long pass downfield. This one is tipped by cornerback Rick Lindquist right into the hands of Frank Magwood. A 42-yard gain to the Nebraska 12. Although Nebraska stopped this drive, Danny Ford is obviously pleased with Jordan's work. And following this timeout, the strategy worked perfectly. The call was for #7, tailback Cliff Austin, to take it on a sweep. And that he did for a touchdown. The try for a two-point conversion failed, but Clemson had taken a 12-7 lead over Nebraska to set off a wild jubilation among the Tiger Poem-printed Clemson fans. Midway in the third quarter, Clemson mounts a 12-play, 75-yard drive. Climaxing it from the Nebraska 13, where Jordan throws for split end Perry Tuttle. He's got it in the corner of the end zone, and with 6:12 to go in the period, Clemson has now moved out to a commanding 19-7 lead over Nebraska. It's extended to 22-7 late in the period on another 36-yard field goal by Ngabwike. But Nebraska comes charging back on a 69-yard, 8-play drive. Roger Craig sweeping wide, goes in for the touchdown from 26 yards out to make the score 22-13. Nice move there. The Cornhuskers really make things exciting on the two-point conversion attempt. Craig taking the pitch. And he sails into the end zone. The score is now 22-15 Clemson, and another 8-point effort could give Nebraska the victory. The scoreboard shows 7 minutes, 49 seconds to go in this Orange Bowl battle. All-America safety man Terry Kennard and his teammates sense that victory is at hand when he and his teammates give the ball back to Clemson with 5:24 to go in the game. Nebraska's last desperate drive fell short, and then it was all over. The emotions of a national championship were too great to hold back. Danny Ford is exalted by his players in a wild celebration. The Tigers have completed a perfect 12-0 season, a national championship. And for Danny Ford, the honor of being named Coach of the Year. So when the bowl games were completed, the final poll showed the Clemson Tigers rising dramatically to become the nation's top college team of 1981. Pittsburgh, for the second year in a row, finished second, losing only to Penn State, the #3 team. Texas is fourth. The defending national champion, Georgia, #5. Alabama, 6th. Washington, 7th. North Carolina was 8th. Nebraska wound up 9th, and Michigan, the preseason favorite, was 10th.
Well, there's one record probably that will not be surpassed for some time to come that was set in 1981, and that's the fact that 7 different teams were ranked #1 during the season. The experts were right on one thing. In fact, they were right on 3 things. They predicted that Jim McMahon of BYU would have a great passing season. He did. They also predicted that Marcus Allen would have a sensational year for USC, and he did. And that Paul Bear Bryant would become the winningest coach in the history of college football. All those three things happened, as we shall see.
Jim McMahon of Brigham Young University had to overcome a number of setbacks on his way to collegiate stardom. A childhood accident nearly caused him the sight of one eye. He still wears glasses off the field. Numerous other injuries have threatened his career, including a knee operation that saw him sit out the entire 1979 season, and knee problems in 1981 that put him on the sidelines for 2 games. He established 55 NCAA season or career records in total offense and passing, and the computers are still searching for more marks that he may have shattered. It's impressive for a quarterback to win 1 national statistical title, but McMahon, believe it or not, led the nation in 3 categories, both in 1980 and 1981, in addition to all the records he rewrote. He did it in portions of basically 3 seasons, as he was primarily a punter during his freshman year. He destroyed the career total offense mark in Division 1A by more than 1,200 yards. His passing yards were nearly 350 more than Mark Herman gained in 4 seasons. BYU fans saw McMahon lead their team to the 6th WAC title in a row, and McMahon himself received the Offensive Player of the Year trophy for the 2nd year in a row. In 1981, Jim McMahon simply became the greatest passer in the history of intercollegiate football. The virtuosity of USC's Marcus Allen was unparalleled. Number 33 became the Heisman Trophy winner, following in the footsteps of 3 other Trojan tailbacks who won that award: O.J. Simpson, Mike Garrett, and Charles White. But what set Allen apart from the others was that he became the first player at any collegiate level to rush for more than 2,000 yards. His accomplishments were staggering in 1981. He obliterated Tony Dorsett's single-season mark by nearly 400 yards. His 213 yards per game average topped Ed Marinaro's record at Cornell. During his career, Allen rushed for more than 200 yards in a record 8 games, 5 consecutively in 1981. It should be further noted that Allen played tailback only during his junior and senior years. He was an unknown blocking fullback for Charles White in his sophomore year and was a defensive back as a freshman. Allen amassed his yardage on the famous Trojan student body left or right sweeps, those powerful plays off tackle. Marcus Allen did in 1981 what no one had ever done before, and it may be a while before anyone can surpass it. Paul William Bryant is known as the Bear. To his faithful followers, he's America's best coach. But it came down to Alabama's season finale against Auburn for the Bear to become college football's winningest coach in its 113-year history. If he didn't win here at Legion Field in Birmingham, this historic day probably would have to wait until sometime in the fall of 1982. Early in the first quarter, Alabama quarterback Alan Gray shows Auburn that he's a running threat. He goes 63 yards and puts the Tide in scoring position at the 20. Moments later from the 1, Gray just gets over the plane of the goal line for an Alabama touchdown, and the Tide leads 7-0. It was apparent from the opening whistle that Auburn, coached by Pat Dye, a former player and assistant coach under the Bear, was a determined football team. Quarterback Joe Sullivan passing complete to Ed West, and he gets the ball down to the Alabama 19-yard line. Now with a 1st and goal to go at the 8, Tiger quarterback Ken Hobby throws toward a crowded corner of the end zone. Tommy Wilcox reads the play and intercepts for Alabama, stopping an Auburn scoring threat. And that gets the Crimson Tide throng churned up. Midway in the second quarter, still 7-0 Alabama, but the situation changes. Look out. Auburn fullback George Peoples darts through a hole, and he's off to the end zone, 63 yards for the touchdown, and the game is tied at 7-all. This is turning out to be the kind of battle that these two old rivals have been engaging in down through the years. There is no question about motivation in this game. The Alabama team wants this one for the Bear. Quarterback Ken Coley tosses a little shovel pass to split end Jesse Bendross. The Tigers are caught off guard just long enough to allow Bendross to pick up steam and go in for the touchdown. The Tide regains the lead, 14-7. And next, what could become a candidate for the football funny of 1981. It's actually an Auburn punt. Alan Bollinger gets it away, And then crazy things start happening. Alabama's Joey Jones can't handle it. The ball becomes a hot potato. And finally, after quite a few awkward bounces, Chuck Clinton pounces on it for Auburn at the Alabama 2-yard line. As a result, Lionel James makes it across the goal line, and midway through the third quarter, Auburn has tied this memorable contest 14-all. Early in the fourth quarter, Auburn moved into the lead on a field goal to make it 17-14. Needless to say, quite a bit was riding on Alabama's next possession. At the Auburn 38, quarterback Walter Lewis using a play invented by Amos Alonzo Stagg himself. The forward pass. It's complete to Jesse Bendross, and he has a touchdown. Alabama's back on top, 21-17. The Tide defense forces an Auburn punt, and the Tide is at the Tiger 49. Lenny Patrick showing the kind of dedication the Alabama players had for winning this game. He breaks 4 seemingly sure tackles before he's finally stopped by Auburn's Dan Dickerson at the 17-yard line. A superlative effort. From the 15, Patrick gets the call again. He dodges desperate Auburn defenders and dances into the end zone for one of the biggest insurance touchdowns ever scored in college football. Alabama has a 28-17 lead that it will never surrender. This game belongs to the Crimson Tide and to Bear Bryant. On Saturday, November the 28th, 1981, at Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama, he now had his 315th victory to surpass Amos Alonzo Stagg. The chase for the record ended, and Paul Bear Bryant stood alone at the top of football's immortals. College football 1981 has now been entered into the record books. And we're left with a legacy of warm memories, the colorful stadiums, the emotions of the game. How pleasant it is to recall those moments that occurred in what General Douglas MacArthur called the friendly fields of strife. The football gridiron is a stage for the strength of youth, about which Samuel Ullman once wrote, "Youth is not a time of life, it's a state of mind. It's not a matter of rosy cheeks, red lips, or supple knees. It's a matter of the will, a quality of the imagination, a vigor of the emotions. It's the freshness of the deep springs of life." From the young energy of a Danny Ford to the seasoned pace of the veteran Bear Bryant, the names in coaching are legend. Bible, Bierman, Blake, Chrysler, Doby, Engel, Faroe, Jones, Leahy, Munn, Neal, Osterbond, Rockney, Shaughnessy, Shaw, Stagg, Waldorf, Warner, Wilkinson, Yost, and Zupke. And the men they coached. What names? Pudge, Doc, The Horse, Tank, Buck, Marchie, Bruiser, Whizzer, Ox, Crazy Legs, Golden Greek, and the Galloping Ghost. This is college football. It touches all of us because we see in it a spirit that lasts a lifetime.